They thought hitting her with a $200,000 fine would be the end of her. That she'd back down, stay quiet, maybe even disappear from public life. But instead, Rachel Monroe stood tall in that courtroom and spoke with such raw honesty that even Judge Harold Benson had to blink away tears. The federal courtroom in Riverside, Nevada was so still you could hear someone cough from the farthest corner. Everyone leaned forward, barely breathing, waiting to hear what the judge would say. Rachel, wearing a sharp navy blue suit, gripped the sides of the defense table with both hands. Her lawyers sat on either side, glancing at her nervously. Nobody had a clue what was coming next. Judge Benson cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses, his face unreadable. He stared down at the papers in front of him for what felt like forever, almost as if he wasn't sure he could go through with it. Then, in a calm voice that echoed through the silent courtroom, he said, "In light of the conduct presented in these proceedings, this court is imposing a fine of $200,000 on Congresswoman Rachel Monroe." A wave of gasps rippled through the gallery. You could hear the frantic scribbling of reporters' pens, the soft taps of phones being raised to capture the moment, tweets being typed before the judge even finished his sentence. But Rachel didn't budge. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. She just stared straight ahead at the judge, her expression completely unreadable. Anyone else might have cracked right there, yelled, cried, stormed out, but not her. Rachel just turned her head toward her legal team and gave the tiniest nod. Then she calmly sat down. The air in the courtroom felt thick, like it had been sucked out entirely. In the third row, a woman whispered to her husband, "That's it. She's done." Up front, a man muttered, "200 grand? No way she walks away from this." Judge Benson gave a light tap of the gavel, signaling the end of the session. Still, nobody moved. It was as if everyone was bracing for something dramatic that never came. Rachel quietly gathered her things: a worn brown binder, a capless pen, a plain notebook, and stood. Her eyes scanned the room, not in search of comfort or pity, but just to look, to see the faces of people who once believed in her, now unable to meet her gaze. As she walked down the aisle, her heels clicking softly on the polished tile, it felt like the room was shrinking around her. Outside, the chaos exploded. Reporters swarmed her, microphones shoved in her face, flashes blinding her, questions hurled like stones. "Do you regret your choices? Will you resign? Are you going to apologize?" She didn't say a word. She just kept moving, her back straight, her lips tight. The midday sun bore down on the courthouse steps. News vans jammed the curb, and protesters crowded the sidewalk. Some were screaming for her resignation, others shouting encouragement. A little boy sitting on his father's shoulders held up a hand-painted sign that read, "We believe in you, Rachel." She stopped just for a moment, long enough to meet the boy's eyes. A flicker of something, hope, maybe, crossed her face. But in that moment, even hope felt like a cruel trick. She climbed into the black sedan waiting at the curb. Her chief of staff, Vanessa Cole, slid in beside her and quickly shut the door to block out the noise. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, the chaos faded into a distant hum. In the quiet of the back seat, Vanessa finally broke the silence, her voice soft and filled with regret. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. None of us saw this coming." Rachel leaned back against the seat and stared up at the stained interior roof. After a long silence, she said, "It's not the fine that bothers me. It's what they want it to mean." Vanessa turned to her, confused. "What do you mean?" Rachel's voice was quiet but heavy with meaning. They want this to be a label, a mark. They want to brand me as just another politician who lost her way. Vanessa shook her head. You're not. They know you're not. Rachel closed her eyes for a second. It's not about what they know. It's about what they believe. The car cruised down the highway, the courthouse shrinking in the rearview mirror, taking with it a piece of Rachel's reputation. But not everyone believed her story was over. By the time Rachel got back to her small townhouse in the quiet streets of Rosewood, the media storm had reached full force. Her name was on every screen, every push notification, every news headline lighting up phones around the country. Congresswoman Monroe hit with massive fine and courtroom showdown. Is this the end of Rachel Monroe's political run? From rising star to public disgrace, what went wrong? Inside her living room, Rachel sat down slowly on the edge of her couch, alone with the noise of a nation still deciding who they believed she was. Still wearing her courtroom suit and clutching that old binder like it was a shield, Mallory Green sat on the edge of her couch, staring blankly as the television replayed grainy footage of her walking out of the courthouse. Every frame seemed slowed down, like it was a championship game highlight, especially the moment Judge Raymond said $200,000. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing on the coffee table. Texts from reporters she barely knew, old colleagues who hadn't reached out in years, and distant relatives offering sympathy in clumsy words. She didn't touch it. Not yet. Across the room, her longtime friend and communications advisor, Erica Miles, paced nervously, yanking at the sleeves of her oversized sweater. Her face was a picture of concern. "You need to say something," Erica muttered, her eyes darting from Mallory to the news ticker crawling across the bottom of the screen. "We have to get ahead of this before the story spins out of control." Mallory didn't reply at first. She just stared at the muted screen, her own face flashing over and over like a warning she couldn't ignore. "What do you want me to say?" she asked quietly. "That I'm sorry? That I earned this?" Erica stopped pacing and leaned forward. "Number. You remind them who you are, why you got into this fight in the first place." Mallory rubbed her temples, feeling every version of herself colliding. The girl from the east side of Jackson Heights, the college student who scrubbed dishes to pay her way through law school at Central Valley University, the congresswoman who promised to stand up for the unheard. Somewhere in the noise, her voice had gotten buried. Erica sat down across from her, elbows on her knees. "You're not done. They want you to think it's over, but it's not. You hear me?" For the first time all day, a tiny smile tugged at the corner of Mallory's mouth. Then the doorbell rang, startling them both. Erica rushed to answer it and returned with a small, plain envelope. No return address, just Mallory's name scribbled in messy, heavy handwriting. She handed it over like it might break. Mallory opened it slowly. Inside was a torn piece of notebook paper. In blue ink, someone had written, "Don't let them break you. You stood for us when no one else would." No name, no signature, just that. Mallory ran her fingers across the words, her throat tightening. "They remember," Erica whispered. Outside, the world was still howling. Commentators speculated. Rivals gloated. Supporters went quiet. Some too afraid to stand beside her, others stepping back to save their own skins. But inside that small townhouse, something shifted. Mallory set the note gently on the table and looked up. Her eyes, for the first time since the verdict, were sharp. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "They can slap a price tag on my name, but they don't get to write my ending." Erica gave her a lopsided smile. Damn right, they don't. Mallory rose, smoothing out her jacket, its wrinkles now clear under the living room lights. Set up a press conference. Erica blinked. Tonight? Tomorrow morning, Mallory said. Let them sweat a little. Erica nodded and darted off to the kitchen to make the calls. Mallory walked to the window and pulled back the curtain just enough to glimpse the crowd of reporters still camping outside. Cameras aimed, microphones ready. They were waiting for her to crumble, but they'd have to wait a while longer. Mallory Green was finished playing defense. The night dragged on into morning without a hint of mercy. Mallory lay awake on her worn leather couch, still in her courtroom clothes, still staring up at the ceiling as if it might hand her the answers she hadn't yet found. The house was quiet, save for the flicker of the street lamp casting long shadows against the wall. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, once, then nothing. Her phone lay face down on the table, buzzing now and then with more calls, more texts, news anchors, political allies, even old friends she hadn't thought about in years. Everyone wanted something from her. She shut her eyes, trying to block them all out, but her mind kept racing. She saw faces of people she'd helped. The single mom from Mesa who thanked her for saving the neighborhood daycare. The retired vet in Fairview who hugged her after she fought to protect his Medicare. The teenager from her old high school who once said, still dressed in her courtroom suit, clutching her binder like it could somehow protect her, Dana Caldwell sat on the couch as the TV buzzed in the background. The footage looped over and over, grainy clips of her walking out of the courthouse, each one slowed to emphasize the moment Judge Halbert announced the $200,000 penalty, like it was the winning shot in overtime. Her phone buzzed nonstop on the table. Calls, messages, alerts, reporters she barely knew. Former co-workers who hadn't spoken to her in years, family offering awkward sympathy she didn't feel ready to accept. Across the room, her longtime friend and communications advisor, Rachel Monroe, paced nervously, tugging at the sleeves of her oversized sweatshirt, her brow furrowed with worry. "You have to say something," Rachel urged, glancing between Dana and the scrolling news ticker on the screen. "We have to take back the story before it spins out of our hands." Dana didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed locked on the TV, watching her own face flicker again and again like a warning. "What would I even say?" she finally asked, her voice low, tired. "That I'm sorry? That I had it coming?" Rachel stopped pacing. "Number. You tell them the truth. Remind them who you are, why you even got into this mess to begin with." Dana leaned forward, massaging her temples, as if that might hold back the wave of emotions threatening to crash down. She was the daughter who grew up in the tough parts of Eastfield. The student who hustled through law school at Valley State, working graveyard shifts at a diner just to keep her dream alive. The woman who stepped into public office vowing to be a voice for the people everyone else ignored. Somewhere along the way, that voice got buried beneath headlines and noise that didn't care about truth. Rachel sat across from her, elbows on knees, voice softer now. "You're not done. They want you to think you are, but you're not. You hear me?" For the first time that day, Dana managed a faint smile. Just then, the doorbell rang, startling them both. Rachel jumped up and returned moments later with a small brown envelope. No return address, just Dana's name, scribbled in bold, uneven handwriting. She passed it to Dana like it was made of glass. Inside was a torn sheet of notebook paper, scrawled in blue ink. "Don't let them break you. You stood for us when nobody else would. No name, no signature, just that." Dana traced the words with her fingertips, throat tightening. "They remember," Rachel whispered. Outside, the noise raged on. Commentators speculated. Opponents celebrated. Allies distanced themselves. But inside that tiny townhouse, something shifted. Dana placed the note gently on the table, met Rachel's eyes, and said, "I'm not disappearing. They might have slapped a number on me, but they don't get to write the ending." Rachel grinned. "Damn right." Dana stood, brushing off her wrinkled jacket under the harsh light. "Set up a press conference." Rachel blinked. "Tonight?" Dana shook her head. "Tomorrow morning. Let them wonder all night." Rachel hurried off to make the calls while Dana walked to the window, peeking out at the reporters camped outside, cameras ready, questions loaded. They were waiting for her to fold, but they'd be waiting a while. Dana Caldwell wasn't backing down anymore. Night gave way to a sleepless morning. Dana lay on the couch, still in her courtroom clothes, staring at the ceiling like it might suddenly offer her clarity. The house was quiet except for the soft flicker of a street lamp outside. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once, then silence. Her phone vibrated again on the table, but she didn't reach for it. Everyone wanted something. Statements, reactions, quotes. She had nothing left to give. Her mind drifted to the people she'd helped. The single mom who thanked her for saving the local daycare. The elderly man who cried when she defended his health care. The teenager who once told her she made him believe regular folks had a shot in politics. Those memories merged with the judge's voice in her mind, cold and detached, calling out the fine like a line on a receipt. $200,000. Not just a number, a warning. She sat up suddenly, the couch groaning under her. Was it worth it? The battles, the sleepless nights, the constant push against walls that never budged? The doubt hit hard. But then, so did something else. A memory. It was late 2013. She'd just finished her final law exam and was riding the city bus home because her car had died again. Broke, tired, and unsure if she'd even passed. An older woman beside her started talking, asked Dana what she wanted to do next. Dana, barely awake, muttered, "I just want to fight for people like us." Folks no one listens to. The woman smiled with tired eyes and said, "Then don't let the noise push you off the road, baby. Drive right through it." Dana's eyes opened, sharper now. Maybe the world was loud, but she hadn't made it this far just to fold. A soft knock at the door. Rachel poked her head in, holding 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to Dana, then perched on the arm of the couch. They drank in silence, letting the morning light spill through the windows. "You don't have to do this," Rachel said gently. "If you're not ready, we can stay quiet. Let it fade." Dana shook her head. "If I stay quiet, they get to decide who I am." Rachel searched her face, saw no cracks. "Then we fight." Dana smiled. "Yeah, we fight." Outside, the courthouse tower stood tall against the pale morning. Dana rolled her shoulders, thinking of the boy with the hand-painted sign, of that letter, of the people who still believed. They were worth it. She was worth it. She stood up and said, "Let's write something that means something. Something real." Rachel lit up. "Now you're talking." They got to work. No polished talking points, just truth. Dana didn't want to win sympathy. She just wanted her voice back. The sun climbed higher. The city stirred. And in that little house, a different kind of battle had already begun. By the time Dana Caldwell stepped into the courthouse the next morning, the outside buzzed with reporters, flashing cameras, murmurs flying. The marble steps felt colder today, heavier, But Dana walked with purpose. No security detail, no spin doctors, just Rachel and a young intern holding a worn folder. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Activists, journalists, former colleagues. Some familiar faces turned away. Some glared. Judge Halbert was already seated, flipping through paperwork. He looked worn, his robe seeming heavier too. The bailiff called for silence. "Ms. Caldwell," Judge Halbert said, peering over his glasses, "I assume you've got something to say." Dana stepped forward. No notes, no script, just the same raw honesty that had gotten her elected. She cleared her throat. "When I took that oath," she began, "I didn't promise to be perfect. I didn't promise to keep quiet. I promised to serve. I promised to stand, even when standing came with a cost." The room stilled. "I've been called a lot these past 24 hours. Entitled, reckless, ungrateful. Maybe to some, standing your ground is reckless." And Dana kept going, because it was finally her turn to speak. Her words cut through the noise like a blade. "Sometimes it's easier to sit down," she said, scanning the room. Her eyes paused on a small group of young women near the back, wide-eyed, hanging on her every word. "I didn't come from wealth," she said, voice steady. "Didn't come from big names or fancy networks. I came from a neighborhood where folks got talked about a lot, but never really listened to." Her tone sharpened just a bit. "And every time I speak in this chamber, I carry them all with me." A soft murmur rippled across the room, quickly quieted. Judge Randall shifted in his seat but didn't interrupt. She kept going. "That fine you dropped on me? It's not just about the money. It's meant to make me think twice before standing up for people who don't have lawyers on speed dial or friends in high places." She paused. Her voice softened, but the strength behind it didn't fade. "I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes, but I don't stay quiet just to make others comfortable." Her voice cracked, barely, not from weakness but from a deeper kind of resolve. "I'll take full responsibility when my passion pushes too far. I'll pay for that, but I will never apologize for caring too much. I won't say sorry for fighting too hard." When she finished, the room sat in silence, frozen, waiting. Judge Randall looked down, then up at her. He pressed his fingertips together, thoughtful. The pause stretched, and then something unexpected. He took off his glasses and set them down, his hands slightly unsteady. He rubbed the bridge of his nose before speaking in a tone far rougher than usual. "This court acknowledges the sincerity in Representative Carter's statement," he said, "and in light of her service and the broader context of this case, the fine is hereby suspended." A slow wave of breath moved through the courtroom. Suspended, not erased, but lifted. Hannah didn't react right away. She just nodded, the same calm nod she'd given her attorney the day before. In the gallery, someone started clapping, just one person at first, then more, until nearly the entire room stood, not to celebrate a win, but to honor the woman who refused to let the system wear her down. Celeste wiped her eyes with the edge of her sleeve, laughing quietly. Hannah turned to face the crowd, but her gaze met Judge Randall's for a brief moment, and what she saw there wasn't disdain, wasn't pity, it was respect. But outside, a different kind of storm waited. When the heavy courthouse doors swung open, Hannah stepped into a wall of noise. Reporters shouted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Voices tangled together in chaos. For one moment, she froze at the top step. Sunlight hit her face, and everything blurred into light and sound. Celeste's hand touched her elbow. "You ready?" Hannah nodded, pulling her shoulders back. let's go." They walked down the steps slowly, not dodging the cameras, not hiding. The crowd had to move around them. A young reporter pushed forward, mic outstretched. "Representative Carter, do you feel vindicated?" Hannah paused, a tiny smile tugging at the edge of her mouth. "I feel heard," she said. Just that. It sliced through the clamor cleaner than any speech could. Behind her, Celeste grinned and whispered, "Mic drop." The noise grew again, but Hannah raised her hand, not to quiet them, but to speak. The crowd leaned in. So did the microphones. "I didn't show up today to win," she said. "I showed up because when a system tries to put a price tag on your courage, you might have to pay it, but you don't ever sell it." The crowd stirred, glancing at each other, letting that sink in. Even the media crew fell a bit quieter. Behind her, the courthouse doors creaked again. A few officials had come out to watch, and among them stood Judge Randall, arms folded, watching. Celeste leaned in again. "You just flipped the whole story." Hannah didn't take her eyes off the crowd. "Good," she said. "Let's keep flipping it." They reached the sidewalk, where a handful of volunteers and supporters were waiting, holding up simple hand-painted signs that read, "Still Standing." One by one, those words took on a deeper meaning. People began gathering around Jasmine. A young woman in hospital scrubs, a retired teacher, a mechanic still wearing grease-stained overalls, all stepped forward to shake her hand, to thank her, to remind her that not every story was written by those hoping for her downfall. In the crowd, an older man with a weathered beard and a Vietnam veteran's cap stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly as he grasped Jasmine's hands. "They tried to tear you down," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But you're exactly what we need. Don't forget that." Jasmine squeezed his hand, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I won't," she promised. The moment was small but significant, grounding her amidst the chaos. Just a few feet away, Celeste was answering questions from reporters, spinning the focus away from fines and courtroom drama toward Jasmine's achievements, her record, her dedication to keeping promises. For every critic sharpening their knives on cable news, there were real people here, people who didn't care about political games, just looking for someone who'd fight for them, and Jasmine wasn't going anywhere. As she headed toward the waiting car, Celeste jogging to keep up, a photographer snapped a picture that would soon be all over the news. Jasmine, mid-step, sunlight catching her face, her expression fierce and unyielding. Inside the car, Celeste handed her a tablet, buzzing with updates, news alerts, social media reactions, polls. "You're trending," Celeste said, half laughing. "Still Standing is everywhere." Jasmine leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Let them talk." Celeste grinned. "They're not just talking. They're listening." Jasmine gazed out the window as the car pulled away from the courthouse, watching the blur of buildings and ordinary people walking the sidewalks, living their lives. She thought about them, the ones who didn't have cameras on them, but carried battles just as heavy. They were the reason she couldn't back down. Not now, not ever. But respect from the public wasn't the only thing waiting for her. By the next morning, the atmosphere around Jasmine had shifted. Not just a small change, but a full transformation. The national conversation was moving fast, but somehow Jasmine had managed to steer it. Headlines no longer focused on courtroom drama, but on words like resilience, authentic leadership, and the price of courage. Cable networks looped clips of her courthouse speech. Local stations in cities like Modesto and Bakersfield aired interviews with her former clients, neighbors, and teachers who shared stories of the Jasmine they knew. The girl who stood up to bullies, the teenager who volunteered at the local shelter every weekend, the young lawyer who once drove through a storm to attend a late-night bail hearing for a client no one else cared about. At a small diner off Route 99, a group of truckers watched one of those interviews over scrambled eggs and hash browns. "She's the real deal," one said, tipping his hat. "Ain't many like her left." Word was spreading fast. Back in San Mateo, Jasmine sat with Celeste in a quiet coffee shop, away from the cameras for the first time in days. Here, she was just another woman nursing a cup of black coffee, worn at the edges but still standing strong. Celeste scrolled through her tablet, shaking her head. "You've got invitations from every major network, morning shows, political panels, even book deals." Jasmine raised an eyebrow over her mug. "Book deals over getting fined?" Celeste laughed. "Over surviving it." Jasmine set her mug down, a thoughtful look crossing her face. "I'm not interested in being a symbol. I just want to keep doing the work." Celeste nodded. "Then we do it smarter, on your terms." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the regulars come and go, teachers grading papers, retirees arguing over crossword puzzles, teenagers glued to their phones. Ordinary lives, the lives Jasmine had promised to fight for. Her phone buzzed on the table, a new text from an old mentor, Judge Marion Fields, one of the first women to serve as a Superior Court judge in Fresno County. "Proud of you. Never let them decide who you are. You've already won." Jasmine smiled to herself, a sense of peace settling over her. Later that afternoon, she held a community meeting in a borrowed union hall downtown. No media circus, no staged photo ops, just folding chairs, fluorescent lights, and the people she cared about most. Families filled the room, kids perched on laps, teenagers slouched in the back, elders sitting up front with canes leaning against chairs. Jasmine didn't stand on a stage. She didn't speak behind a podium. She stood among them at eye level and spoke plainly. "You deserve leaders who don't fold when the fight gets dirty." People began approaching Jasmine, a young woman dressed in hospital scrubs, a retired teacher, and even a mechanic still in his grease-stained overalls. They came to shake her hand, to thank her, to remind her that not every headline was written by those hoping for her failure. Among the crowd was an older man with a grizzled beard and a Vietnam veteran's cap. He stepped forward, his hands shaking slightly as he grasped Jasmine's hands with both of his. "They tried to tear you down," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But you're exactly what we need. Don't ever forget that." Jasmine squeezed his hand in return, swallowing the lump that rose in her throat. "I won't," she managed. The moment was simple but powerful, grounding her amid the chaos. A few feet away, Celeste spoke with reporters, skillfully steering the conversation away from courtroom drama and fines, and instead highlighting Jasmine's record, her victories, and the promises she'd kept. For every critic sharpening their knives on cable news, there were real people here. People who didn't care about political games. People who just wanted someone to fight for them. Jasmine wasn't going anywhere. As she headed for the waiting car with Celeste jogging beside her to keep up, a photographer snapped a picture that would later make front pages nationwide. Jasmine Crockett, mid-step, sunlight catching her face, her expression fierce and unbroken. Inside the car, Celeste handed her a tablet filled with updates, news alerts, polls, and social media reactions. "You're trending," Celeste said with a laugh. "Hatch is still standing as everywhere." Jasmine leaned back in her seat and let out a slow breath. "Let them talk," she said quietly. "Let them listen. Celeste grinned. "They're not just talking, they're listening." Jasmine gazed out the window as they drove away from the courthouse, watching the world blur by. Ordinary people walking down sidewalks, living their lives. She thought of them, the ones who didn't have cameras aimed at them, but who were carrying battles just as heavy. They were the reason she couldn't back down. Not now, not ever. But gaining respect from the public wasn't the only thing awaiting Jasmine. By the next morning, the temperature around her had shifted. Changed, really. The national conversation moved quickly, but somehow Jasmine had managed to steer it. The news was no longer about courtroom drama. Now, words like resilience, authentic leadership, and the price of courage filled the headlines. Cable networks ran clips of her courthouse speech over and over. Local stations from places like Fresno and Stockton aired interviews with her former clients, neighbors, and teachers who spoke about the Jasmine they knew. The girl who stood up to bullies, the teenager who volunteered at the shelter every weekend, the young lawyer who once drove through a storm to make a late-night hearing for a client nobody else cared about. In a small diner off Route 99, a group of truckers watched one of those interviews while eating scrambled eggs and hash browns. "She's a real deal," one said, tipping his hat. "Ain't many like her left." Word spread quickly. Back in San Mateo, Jasmine sat in a quiet coffee shop across from Celeste for the first time in days, free from cameras. Here, she was just another woman nursing a worn cup of black coffee. Celeste scrolled through her tablet, shaking her head in disbelief. "You've got invitations from every major network, morning shows, political panels, even a couple of book deals being floated." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Book deals over fines? Over surviving it?" Celeste chuckled. Jasmine put her mug down, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "I'm not interested in being a symbol. I just want to keep doing the work." Celeste nodded. "Then we do it smarter, on your terms." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the regulars come and go, teachers grading papers, retirees arguing over crossword puzzles, teenagers glued to their phones. Ordinary lives, the lives Jasmine had promised to fight for. Her phone buzzed on the table. A new text from an old mentor, Judge Marion Fields, one of the first women to serve as a Superior Court judge in Fresno County. "Proud of you. Never let them decide who you are. You've already won." Jasmine smiled to herself, feeling a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Later that afternoon, she held a community meeting in a borrowed Union Hall downtown. No media circus, no carefully staged photo ops, just folding chairs, fluorescent lights, and the people she cared about most. Families packed the room, their kids perched on laps, teenagers slumped at the back, and elders sitting at the front, canes leaning against chairs. Jasmine didn't stand behind a podium or on a stage. She stood among them, at eye level, speaking plainly. "You deserve leaders who don't fold when the fight gets dirty," she said, her voice firm.